In this lecture, I'd like to take up sort of where I left off in the last lecture, talking about internal links or references. And I may have thought that I saved the best for last, but you'll have to be the judge for that. You'll notice that in this diagram, the and focus one, the map and perspectives one, and the elements all point to selector. Well, selector is sort of an option that you can use with all of the others. It's sort of a real and, so that you can specify. A selector is a way to select more than a single item or a small group of items explicitly. It's meant to do selections based upon types or tags or other attributes. If you look at the examples here, I could say text equals selector, or I could say text equals an item plus selector, where selector is some definition of items defined by a search criteria. So you can do searches in Kumu up here. You can search right here for elements. So if I say well, if I just say A, it lists all of the stuff that's got an A in it, and I could select and then hit enter, and it would go ahead and bring that particular item into focus. Or I could search for B1. All right, but it's searching for element titles, not loop titles. Though, in addition to just doing a search on loop titles, you notice this little rocket over here says build selector. It allows you to build a selector based upon these different things, based upon connection type or description or the element type, the ID, the image, the label, the loop type, or the tags, and what it is. So that I could come in here and I could say element type is, and these, the iLink are the types that I defined for this set of additional elements that I wanted to use in this, in the lectures on the description of internal references. So what this is, what it has built, is a selector. And I'm going to select the selector and copy it to the clipboard because I'm going to use it in a minute. But right here I can say use selector. Notice that it has selected all 6 of those items because they all have the type of iLink, and it says there are 6 elements selected. And if I click here, it'll deselect the elements and take me back. I could come up here and say I want the label is, and here I can select B1, and this is label equals B1 work harder, and use this, and then it would go ahead and select that label and bring that into view. So back to the one that I initially set up and copied. If I come in here and say test parent equals element, and then paste that thing in there and add the parent. If I now go ahead and select this, notice that all 6, all 6 of these elements are selected the same way they were selected when I built the selector here. So that you can, in all of these definitions, you can use selectors so that you could even say, I want this map, this perspective, question mark selection, and put a selector in there, question mark focus, and another selector which defines what it is that I want to focus on. So it's the selector option is extremely powerful and potentially even more confusing than the rest of them because it has so many possible alternatives to it. And being that there are so many alternatives, I have difficulty myself remembering them, even though I use Kumu almost every day. So my answer to this is I go ahead and use Kumu as a support vehicle to help me figure these things out. So I'll go into the build selector and I'll build a selector in here, copy it, and then I'll use it in a link rather than having to try and remember how it's put together, because it's there are so many options that it has a tendency to be overwhelming. And be aware that you're in a trial and learning mode, because because you can build a selector which is, I could say, element type is iLink, or label is B2 water level, which is actually on some other map someplace, and it's just not actually valid. And if I use this selection, well, it selects these, but it doesn't do the B2 water level because it's actually over on some other map someplace. So you can hurt yourself, or, well, let's not say hurt yourself. You can do things, you can put together selectors that Kumu can't figure out how to execute the way you think they should be executed, because they're inconsistent with what makes sense. They may seem to make sense to you, but they don't make sense to Kumu, and therefore when they don't work, it's because they don't make sense. So you end up having to try them and sort of learn your way forward doing them. Now, in addition to that, there are two documents in the help manual. There's a page on using selectors, most of which has been covered already, though there are a bunch of shortcuts for using IDs and tags and types, and I can't remember them all. So if I'm going to do something particular in a model, I have read this page, and I've read the selector reference a couple of times, simply to sort of give me a sense of what's there, not that I can remember it. And then when I'm doing something in particular, I sort of say, I think I saw this in the CSS selector reference. Let me go look at that document and see if there was something in there that was a shortcut for what I was trying to do. And if there is, I'll use it. Oftentimes I think I've got it sorted out, and I'll try it and it works. And sometimes it doesn't work. It takes 2 or 3 tries for me to get it figured out so that what I'm trying to do makes sense to Kumu. And it's simply that there are so many capabilities or so many options available. It's tough to make an enormous number of options available and make it completely obvious to anything other than the software. So hope you found this piece on selector of use or informative, and the only way that you begin to get comfortable with it, like everything else in Kumu, is go use some of them. Go build a causal loop diagram or some relationship map, and then attempt to use some internal reference or internal links to display parts of that relationship map, or certain elements or certain connections. And if you have questions, post them to the discussion and we'll see that they get answered. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye.